everyone. This is the 2166 that I've retrofitted with a 54-inch deck and did some stuff to the engine, put a new PTO on it and stuff. So it's a 2166, but it's doing 2500 series duty with this big old deck, and it's been beat up. And I want to show you some things to look for on the aluminum transmission. These are actually pretty good transmissions for a garden tractor, for a light-duty garden tractor. Decent size shaft, decent size support bearing all the way outboard here. Same thing over here. You got a longer shaft on this side, longer tube. And they're boxed in here, so they've got some support on the other side of the transmission where they have the hitch plate. So you got 4 bolts there. They've got a great hydro unit itself. We'll go take a look up underneath here, but what I'm going to show you after we take a look at the unit itself is one of the pitfalls of this system. So here's what they look like underneath. Decent sized case, holds like freaking 7 quarts of oil or something stupid. Like way more than it needs to. And really good hydrostatic transmission. This is I think this is a BDU 10 by Hydro Gear. Yeah, these are BDU 10s. So these aren't as good as the ones in the 3000 series, but these are still fantastic little hydros. They run dry. The transmission control linkage is super easy to maintain, doesn't really need anything. These springs here that ride on a rod, I think these were done away with when they went to the cast iron case. But these are kind of nice. These are an extra spring cushion for the drive. But the problem with the aluminum case, not in the internals really, it's in the mounting. So on this side you have a mounting spot here. You have one here that I've replaced. Actually, I've replaced both of those bolts. And then they have another one here. So on this side, you can see, it looks like they probably had intended for there to be a mount here, but there's nothing. On this side, you basically got 3 mounting locations. 2 at the top, 1 down at the bottom. And then on the opposite side, you've got 2 mounts at the bottom and 2 at the top. These 2 at the top have stayed tight on this machine the whole time I've had it, pretty much. The 2 bottom ones kept. Let's see if I can get that to focus. These 2 bottom ones here were the issue. And I replaced the drive shaft bushings, little barrels on this unit because they were getting sloppy, but the reason they were getting sloppy, I found, is that the transmission was moving. Now this unit has seen some severe use. The gears sound kind of wonky. When you go from drive to coast, you can hear them. They've got some play. This is probably a 1,000+ hours unit that's been severely used. And it's been rolled. This hitch plate has been beat back into shape. It's pretty much exemplary of a unit that has been abused. But the thing to check and make sure you keep an eye on are these fasteners. This one here on mine. Luckily, this one behind here has stayed pretty tight and I haven't had to pull it back out. But I've had to rethread this one and that one. And then I had to use a bottom tap on these 2 here to get just a couple more threads out of them. And I've replaced all the bolts with actual bolts that aren't self-threading. So they have a full thread pitch on them instead of like a triangle shaped pattern. So those have been replaced. And that's pretty much the main issue with these. I mean, they last for years. over 1,000 hours on this one, in fact, even under pretty heavy use. I mean, you're not going to win any tractor pulls with them or anything, but they're not designed for that. They're a good light-duty garden tractor transmission, but they do work themselves loose, so be mindful of that. Check these guys. Check these guys, and occasionally pull this fender pan off, and you know, clean underneath there. Make sure it's dry and clean. That's the main thing. I'm chasing a leak on this one, but I did want to say double check these fasteners because they don't have a lot of thread engagement, and they're self-threading into aluminum. So yeah, there's my PSA for the 2000 series aluminum case. Not a bad transmission, but you gotta check some things. Alright, so I have pulled off the fender pan to take a look at where the leak was coming from, and as I suspected, what's happened is that now this one doesn't crack into the case, like into this fluid side of the case. So actually there might be, no, that's just part of the casting. So you can see the mounting bolt had cracked there and tweaked. From the top down you can see how bent the hitch plate is on this thing. Like I said, this one was rolled, so, and beat up in general. And then in the front here, you've got another, this is actually where the leak is coming from. So you can see how wet, look down this way. I've been getting a leak underneath, which is what caused me to look at all this. And you can see back in here, I've sprayed it down a couple times, so it's not as bad as it should look, but it's pretty wet all the way down through there. I came in here to find out where the leak was. I suspected that it was coming from the top here, and it is. And what I found is one of those mounting bolts has cracked the case right here. There's a crack. And so what's happening is it won't leak when it sits, but anytime it's running, you can see that that's like wet grass down in there. Anytime that it's running and fluid is moving around the case, it leaks right out of this crack right here and goes down the side of the transmission and ends up with a drip on the floor. So I'm going to clean that crack. Probably put a little bit of a drill point on either side of the crack and fill it with some epoxy, some JB Weld just for now to seal it up. And it shouldn't get worse, but we'll see. At least for now, it'll temporarily stop the leak. And then back here, the same deal. Probably epoxy that too. That'll hobble this thing along for a little longer. You know, this transmission's probably not worth putting a lot of time into, so I think probably just look for a good used replacement, or maybe find one off of a donor tractor. I do have a cast iron one out in the yard. The problem with just swapping out for cast iron is that the frame changed. So they have these, like, part of the frame is like a mounting ear on either side here that takes place of those bolts. So it's a little more complicated than just swapping it in. Some of the control linkage is different too. Okay, it is the next morning, so the JB Weld has cured. And we are going to go check for leaks before we reassemble. This one over here is cured too. That one wasn't leaking, but a buddy of mine dropped off this 2165, and this one's actually in pretty good shape, but I wanted to show you that even the ones that are in decent shape and aren't abused still loosen up. So this has not been touched. You can see that transmission bolt is just sticking out, more or less, visibly loose. And I noticed when I got on the tractor, it felt a little sloppy in the drivetrain somewhere. So what you can do is rock the tractor back and forth in place if you're concerned. It's kind of hard to do this with the trying to hold the phone and not. You can hear that, and if you're looking for movement, between the frame and the transmission, you can actually watch this bolt move back and forth. They're actually up and down, I think, is what it's doing right now. Yep. See it? That's the whole transmission moving. And it's hard to tell because I'm moving everything with my hand and I'm connected to the tractor right now, but you can actually watch the transmission move. Back and forth. So these all need tightened up. I don't think any of them are snapped or broken, but there you go. It's one of those things that probably should always have been checked after, you know, once a year, check those things. I've Loctited mine. If they're coming out, they're going to come out probably with an impact. So, and at that point, I mean, you know, if I pull the transmission out of this thing, I'm replacing it. It's not worth messing with otherwise. I did want to show you that. Let's take a look and see what we got for leaks. So it won't leak sitting there, it will only leak when it's moving. We're looking for any kind of leaks down in there. Of course, this situation may vary. You may not have a leak here. You may not have a leak at all. The only thing that'll leak is it's a crack. And at that point, it's really bad. So I don't see any leaks. I'll run it for a minute. Alright, I think we're good. I will run this some more before I put it back together, but I think we're good. As good as it's going to get for now. So there you go. That's the deal. 2000 series aluminum transmissions. I wanted to show you what happens internally, or what can happen internally if these are left go for long enough. They'll crack. Check them, make sure they're tight, and yeah, if you develop any leaks, take a look up here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.